Welcome back to STL Live. My guest is acclaimed author, historian, and Dartmouth professor, Dr. Randall Balmer. And Dr. Balmer, before we went to break, we were talking about this 40 some odd years of going from point A to this big question mark right now. And you were talking a little bit about how we got from there to here. So
sure, I think it goes back to the origins of the religious right. And a lot of people think the religious right got started in response to the Roe v. Wade decision on abortion coming down from the Supreme Court in 1973. And I've done a lot of research on this, extensive research on this, and it's absolutely false. The origins of the religious right have nothing to do with abortion. The religious right came into being in the late 1970s, not in the early 1970s, and it was an attempt to defend tax exemption for racially segregated institutions, so-called segregation academies in the South.
Say that again.
It was organized as a way to defend tax-exempt status for racially segregated institutions, so-called segregation academies in the South, but also rather prominently Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina.
So now who would benefit from that?
Well, they benefited from it by having tax exemption. And a tax exemption, let's be clear about that, is a form of public subsidy. If an organization or church, college, university does not pay, say, property taxes to a local entity, the rest of the community has to come up with the difference. And so that was the case in the Bob Jones case. The Bob Jones case was the most prominent, but there were other schools as well. And Jerry Falwell, one of the organizers of the religious right, had his own segregation academy in Lynchburg, Virginia. So my argument is that as the religious right began to coalesce in the late 1970s, ironically, to defeat an evangelical president, Jimmy Carter, in the 1980 election, they cast their lot with the far-right fringes of the Republican Party. And once they did that, you have this melding of religious right activists with the Republican Party. So that today in the 2016 campaign, when we have a nominee for the Republican Party who is now in his third marriage after 2 divorces, hardly exemplar or poster boy for family values, a vulgar candidate, you have the religious right still marching in lockstep behind that candidate. And I think in order to understand that, you have to understand the history, and that's what I plan to talk about at Second Presbyterian.
Well, let's talk about it. You said tonight you'll be talking specifically on spirituality, morality in the election. Do you feel like that used to be something that was vibrant come election time that now is just non-existent?
It's hard to say. It has more, again, to do with history. What happened in the 1970s after the scandal of Watergate and Nixon's resignation, we Americans wanted to know that our presidential candidates were good, decent, moral people. So we cared about their religious affiliations. It's a bad way of asking the question because religious affiliation does not necessarily coordinate with morality. But we wanted to know something about the religious or the moral compass of our presidential candidates. Now I think the farther away we get from Nixon, the less important that question has become. Although 2016 it might raise the issue again.
Sure. What do you see happening moving forward? Do you see this getting any better? Do you see it getting worse? You're a historian, so from what you've studied, what could you predict?
Well, I tend to shy away from those things precisely because I'm a historian. But I think I have to say that this campaign I find it regrettable. I find it painful. It is so debased. And we used to think of campaigns as a contest of ideas. And I think that's probably was a bit exaggerated, but we're not seeing that this time around. What the future holds, I wish I were more optimistic, but I think good people need to make the case for having a morally grounded discussion, having a contest of ideas rather than simply mudslinging the way we're seeing this time around. No, it's not like mudslinging was never been part of presidential campaigns. That's not the case. But it's so important, I think, that we demand more from our leaders. I'm afraid that who we vote for, who we elect, too often is a reflection of who we are as a people. And I have to say, this time around, it scares me.
Wow. Well, thank you for being here today, and thank you for putting together this lecture series that you're doing at the First Presbyterian Church.
Second
Presbyterian Church, not the first one, the second one, Second Presbyterian Church. And I think that people will learn a lot should they come out and be a part of your lecture. For more information on Dr. Balmer and the 2016 Contemporary Issues Forum at the Second Presbyterian Church in the Central West End, visit secondchurch.net. There's more STL Live after this. Stay with us.